Okay, so this is a tutorial if you just don't really know how to function, I guess, and you can't figure things out that are really easy. So this is the ship game. Uh, I've gotten a few requests about making a tutorial since a lot of people, don't know how to function and figure this out. So let's check this out. Okay, so basically you can, explore your ships. I mean, if you can't operate a HUD at this point, I mean, I don't know if I can save you. But for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm just going to get us oriented with maneuvering the various ships, and particularly in cruise ships in particular. So I've chosen the Sun Princess since it's a pretty good beginner ship. Obviously, all these ships have slightly different HUDs, but once you can master one of these, I mean, jumping around with different ships and different HUDs and whatnot, it should be pretty easy. Alright, so let's get going on the Sun Princess. We're going to be departing from Nassau, Bahamas. I selected this port because... it's still loading. Oh, there we go. I selected this port because it's somewhat of a challenge to get out of, and by somewhat I mean it's like medium difficulty. So basically, because I am docked facing this way, we do have to use the turning basin to actually exit the channel. So before we actually get going, let me just go over the basics of how the whole terrain system works in this game. So basically, if at any point you double click, it'll tell you the type of terrain. See, that's mixed. Mixed is generally shallow water or harbor areas, so you can sail over that. Now here's the thing. In many of these pieces of land, if you double click, it will say mixed, meaning that you could theoretically drive over objects. However, this is not a super amazing practice, because if you double click here, it'll say land. If you get your ship stuck on land, you're going to be fucked. I'm just going to say it. Because, I mean, I was driving a cruise ship once, and there's a small-ass little island. I forgot to... we'll get into the navigation later, but there's a small-ass little island in the way that I didn't know about, which was my fault because I didn't zoom in and check out the route. I was going between I believe it was St. Martin and Port Canaveral, Florida. I hit a small island that was actually registered as land in this terrain system, and it'll stop your ship dead in the water, and it will be a pain in the ass to actually navigate into the areas where it's mixed. You have to do a lot of double clicking like that to figure it out. Okay, and also, actually we'll get into the navigation once we get underway, but the navigation is extremely fucking helpful. Also, another reason I picked this ship is because it does have a heading lock. Now, not all these have it, but okay, so let's just go over the basics here of just leaving the dock and steering. That's super fundamental. We can go over this shit later, but I mean, obviously a lot of this has words like your horn, your anchor. So basically the way this works is when you turn your wheel, you can also use the arrow keys to turn it. Now see if you notice it snapped. Sometimes it'll snap on some of the ships. It just depends. That can be very annoying or helpful. Just depends. Sometimes it'll snap to the right angles and you'll be able to execute your maneuver well. But other times it'll just get really fucking annoying. So you can either, do the arrows or manually twist the wheel like this. And it'll obviously give you your bearings. That the azipods, these are azipods because they rotate fully. Okay, so basically when you move forward, your water is pushing in the direction of the white arrows. And obviously backwards, it's the reverse. Remember, you're in the point of the view of the driver's seat. So to leave this dock, we want to push our water to the left. So let's do a full 90-degree angle here. Navigate out of the dock. Let's see. I'm not getting exactly where we want it. I don't know what the hell is going on. This thing didn't snap to the proper position, so I'll just have to wait for the azipods to rotate into the position, into the full. I want to have exactly 90 because I don't have a whole lot of room for error here. So we really need to get this. We can't afford to be. Looks like. See, this is a perfect example of the snap just getting in the fucking way. where it keeps snapping to the wrong position when you try and arrow. And you'll obviously understand this. I believe this is one of the ships. The Oasis and the Queen Mary 2 don't seem to have this problem, but it sometimes gets in the way. Sometimes it'll help you. All right, so we're at a full 90 degrees to the pushing. Now remember, when you're pushing the water to the left, you're also going to turn to the left from the bow. I'm obviously assuming that you're throttling forward. Now this particular ship doesn't actually have a clickable throttle, so you just have to use the arrows for this one. And before we, obviously, up here is your volume, your home, your this is the navigation map, which we'll get into once we're underway. That's obviously how you untie the ship. A lot of this stuff is pretty easy. That's your online mode. This thingy right here, this control item, is the bow thruster, which is basically, the bow thruster will basically force water in the opposite direction that you push this. So if you want to turn the bow of the ship to the right, simply move that to the right, and we'll execute a maneuver to get out of this dock. So first, what we want to do is push away from the pier. So let's undock here. We'll add some throttle and also some bow thruster. That's really important that we do this relatively evenly. So as you can see, as we adjust the bow thrusters and the throttles accordingly, we are pushing away from the dock slowly but surely. You do have to be patient in this game, so that's just the reality of it. But we are moving. Once we get, now, I don't have a whole lot of room here, so I'm going to throttle back on the back. You know, you can kind of adjust the bow thrusters and the throttles based on how fast you want to move from the dock. But basically, even I've been playing this game for a while, you can get twisted up on the bearings and where your water's actually shooting. So, you know, for example, like sometimes you do really have to, especially when you're going in reverse, that's when it gets really confusing. So you just have to remember, when you're throttling forward, these white arrows are where the water is pushing. So you just kind of have to apply basic physics in your head. Alright, so to back up here, we're obviously going to use the arrow key since there's no clickable throttle on this ship. Others there is, and that'll help. Also, this is very fundamental. I don't know if you've picked this up, but you have to know this. To center a particular control, say this, you have to double click it, and it'll return it to the centered position. That is a must for this game. If you're sailing long distance and you don't have a heading lock, which is on most of the ships in this game, which don't. I haven't tested this one out. The QM2 has a pretty good one that actually is pretty helpful for navigating when you have like shitty terrain to deal with. Yeah, let's kick these throttles in reverse a little bit more, so that way, you can also, again, reversing, you're pushing the water in the direction of the, obviously, the red arrow, if you haven't picked up on that already. I could also turn these azipods around and throttle that way, but I would rather just do this. I usually like to keep them within 90 degrees. You know, unless I'm doing a turn and I want to back up a little, or if I want to reduce the forward momentum, I'll put the azipods slightly past 90 to slow the ship a little bit when I'm doing my maneuver. And we'll get into that once we get to the turning basin. So I'm going to kick this up for the sake of this tutorial, because we want to get going. This is, again, you're going to have to be patient in this game. It can take up to 15 minutes to leave some of the more complicated docks like Miami. This is like a medium dock. I would say Miami's a hard dock to get out of. So if I can figure out how to... unfortunately, I'm probably not going to cut this video, so I'll probably start getting into the important shit once we're in the turning basins. So if you want to fast forward or just increase the speed of the video, so you don't have to follow all this BS. As you can see, you can start to see some of this stuff on the HUD here. This is obviously your speed. Most of this shit is labeled, so, you know, your heading is your bearing. If you don't know the compass, I can't really save you, because that's pretty basic elementary stuff. I've never even come close to running out of fuel. The lowest I've gotten is in the 80s for percentile. And this is a really important concept here, is your rate of change of the heading. So if you haven't centered a control properly, and you're sailing between, say, two islands, this will obviously not be zero, and that's not good. You're going to be way off fucking course, and it's going to totally fuck up your voyage. So don't do that. because I've learned the hard way of not inspecting and clearly planning your routes. Now later, when I first got into this game and I was a noob, I didn't know how to use the navigation tables, so we'll get into that once we're underway again. So that's very important, so definitely pay attention to that when I get to it. But basically, I was calculating the bearings manually, just using hard math and the ETAs, but that's all available in the nav menu. So it's the navigation once we're out of this channel. So as you can see, we're starting to, I want to kind of navigate, almost do like a 3-point turn using the turning basin here, because this is the channel we have to exit to get the hell out of here. So as a result, I'm gonna, since I'm going reverse and I'm pushing in the direction of the red arrow now, because I'm going in reverse. So I want to angle the isopods in a way that I can do sort of like a 3-point turn like this. I've got a reasonable amount of speed. You can also use the bow thrusters to help, but it's really not necessary if you're still having trouble. Other thing we'll get to is the anchor slows down the ship extremely fast. And if you're having trouble executing turns and maneuvers, you can anchor the ship and then it'll do a perfect turn, like a perfect turn on a dime. So if you're not super coordinated with the bow thrusters and the isopods, that's okay. You can use the anchor if you're having trouble. But I'm somewhat experienced, so I don't really need to use an anchor. I can actually function, so it's okay. I mean, one day I'll get you guys to function and actually be able to do this. So this is a new audio program, so if the audio sucks, I'm sorry, but it's free. So I almost installed a Trojan trying to get this shit set up, so I'm just glad I have something that's sort of working at this point. Alright, so I kind of want to, for the sake of the tutorial, just speed up the maneuver. Oh, fuck it up. This is exactly what I meant by the snapping, but guys, so for the sake of this, let's center the controls. Because at this point, I'll use the bow thruster to help me and just speed this up. At this point, we just want to do a full rotation. I'm going to use the anchor here. It's going to be somewhat loud. I'm just giving you a heads up. I don't know why it's this loud, but I can mute it, but I want you to hear how loud it is, so you accidentally fucking do this when you're... Okay, so now that we've got the anchor down here, watch, this maneuver is going to go pretty... I mean, watch, it's going to stay centered on a point once the anchor actually stops us. So again, if you're having issues with the turning basin, or if you just want to slow down really quick, you're coming in too fast to a port, the anchor's a great way to do it. But it's not instant, so if you drop your anchor here, it's still going to take, like, you better drop your anchor, like, right here if you're coming into this port too fast. You know, if you're going, like, 10 knots coming into this, you're going to need to drop the anchor, like, right there at the latest. So, I'm just saying. Alright, so now that we've kind of reached the second point of the turn here, trying to get out of this turning basin, or the harbor, we can actually start our forward momentum. So, let's pull up the anchor. It's going to be kind of loud. And as you can see, the compass is changing somewhat rapidly. So at this point, we want to start getting that forward momentum. So let's center the controls. And again, there's no central throttle, so you have to kind of manually stop both of the throttles and center them by double clicking. Again, the arrows, and also the arrows, usually it'll snap to your previous position, which can be helpful or bad. Again, the snapping is available on some ships. It just depends on the situation whether it's actually a good thing. So again, that's another situation where I don't want it to snap. So let's just manually turn it to the right like that. And I don't think we need the bow thruster anymore. Let's just get underway here. Let's full throttle this. Now we're going full forward. And literally the second we get out, I mean, docking is a little bit more advanced. I'll probably do that in a separate video, but at this point, I just want to get you somewhat acquainted with how the... I'm also going to test out the heading lock on this ship. That's only available on this ship and the QM2. They have the controls on the Norwegian ship, too, but it doesn't seem to actually work. So, I mean, I don't know. It's somewhat buggy of a game, too. But it's pretty cool for being free and just like a flash game. Like, it's pretty amazing. Alright, so we can definitely center our controls now. Now, this might be a good time to show you the first part of the nav menu. If you go into the navigation chart, this green line will actually show you a projected path of your ship based on the control inputs you have dialed in on your azipods and your bow thrusters and your throttles. This line will get longer as you go faster. So, obviously the controls are still somewhat centering, so this line will straighten out a little bit. As you can see, I have everything centered. So it's just adjusting to my control inputs after like a couple seconds it'll realize. And obviously if you can see, say if I turn an azipod, that'll make an impact on that. If I change the throttles on here, as the speed drops, this line will shorten. And if I use a bow thruster, that's obviously going to have an effect on our projected path here. So, stuff to keep in mind. Now, as we're navigating out of this port, say, for example, I was kind of planning to take us maybe to, let's just say Freeport. Now, again, these islands, especially if you zoom in on these, let's see, some of these might be considered land, so you cannot absolutely not hit these if they're considered land at any place on the island. These seem to be all considered mixed, so you might not be SOL if you hit them. But I've run into islands that are even smaller than that are considered land, so it's just pick of the draw. Now we get to the fun part, navigating. So say you want to navigate. I've navigated long distance. I've done a full 7-day cruise on the Oasis down to St. Thomas, St. Martin, and Nassau, and then back to Florida. So basically, if you want to set a course, let's just say we want to go to Freeport. We want to set a course to Freeport. What you're going to do is, when it comes to navigating, so we're going to want to navigate around these islands, right? So, and keep in mind, your ship is still moving. You can leave this on overnight. You can save your position. I'll get into that once we're out of this harbor and I've showed you everything. So if you double click on a position, it'll give you a bearing that you can... Now, this is going to be a good time. Now, you can either just set the bearing manually, just like turn towards your bearing, center your controls, and then just it'll take you there. What I'm going to try out is the heading lock. So, it's not super... This heading lock isn't as good as the QM2. On the QM2, it'll actually tell you your exact heading, so you kind of know where you're going. But it looks like on this one, you can just kind of use this compass and guess. So right now, let's say we would just, like northwest. Well, actually right now we're going like northwest, so